All right, evening everyone. It's Tuesday night, Dungeons and Deliberations, which means we're going to go back into creating our adventure that we've been working on called the Tower of Lore. As I mentioned before, eventually this will turn into a Ask the DM situation. It still can be, of course, if we get people to come in to check out the stream tonight. Feel free to ask questions. I'm not sure if my VPN is still acting up where it might not be allowing me to see chat or for chat to see my typing. So if that's the case, oops, we'll try to figure out what's going on with that in the next couple of weeks. So it's been working fine the last few streams. I don't understand why it wouldn't be working today, but it doesn't seem to be. But anyway, what we've been doing lately on Tuesdays for Dungeons and Deliberations is going through and discussing how I create adventures when I'm either creating them for a homebrew game or writing them for Adventurers League or things like that. So what we've done is I always go through and try to, again, yeah, so again, we start with the adventure background, which gives me a little bit of information about what's happened before the present day when the characters are going to get their adventure. Then we go with an overview that talks about how long the adventure is. This is, again, how when I get detailed as I'm writing them for publication or for Adventurers League. But I also always do a very fine sketch. And after we finish up these sketches tonight for our different parts, that was generally, if I'm running a homebrew game, that's about as far as I'll go. That way, at least I have every section of what's happening in the adventure and so on. If not, if I'm going to use it for something for publication, then what it will be is this will be just something that then we go through and perhaps maybe create an outline to further expand on the ideas and actually sit down and write each section of that. But I'm not sure if we're going to do an outline specifically for this. I think what we might do is once we finish up with all of the different parts, we may go ahead and see if we want to write it, or maybe find someone in our community that wants to write it and perhaps put it up on the DM's Guild, or we might just leave it as is and just move on to another adventure. That way we have a lot of adventures saved up for any homebrew games or for future ideas for running adventures. So we're going to move on. Last week we did the call to action, which is where the players will get their quest. That call to action is about 15 minutes long, and we described everything in there. We described a little bit about the village and the surrounding area. We described a little bit about the office of the constable, and then we discussed who the constable was, and then certain questions that we will have to put into the call to action when we go to write it, answers for those questions. And then, of course, giving out the adventure and, of course, what they can offer the characters to go on the adventure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to part one. In part one, we put up here, travel to the tower. It's going to take about 45 minutes. So to reach the tower, the party must head through the darkling forest, which is inhabited by all types of fey creatures, and they must traverse the dangers therein. So we put down some notes last week, right before we logged off, that we're going to have a description of navigating the woods, fey encounter, give a social exploration, and combat resolution for the encounter. So we're just going to go ahead and go edit. Scroll down here. We're going to leave those notes right there where they're at. We're just going to hit return and put them towards the to keep them there for us. So we'll go part one. You could name each section. I sometimes have fun and name each section after like movies or songs or things like that, but or even literary things. We're just going to call this first part Into the Woods. Nice little, we said, to get to the tower, the party must traverse an area of the darkening forest is inhabited by many fey creatures, both malevolent and malign. A little play from the Fiend Folio back in the day. So what we're going to do is very similar to what we did at the beginning of the call to action. We're going to go through and kind of describe the Darkling Forest a little bit. So we're going to say the Darkling Forest is a very dense wood very dense wood containing mostly elm, maple, and oak trees. With a few evergreens here and there. Let's put just evergreen pines here and there. So the portion of the forest closest to the village is full of game, of wild game, and hardy wood used for creating lumber in the town's mill. As before, we had put both a wood mill and a grain mill in the town. Some of these descriptions are also really good if you're going to go through and create maps. When you go to create maps, sometimes what I'll also do is, if I know there's going to be an encounter, I'm a fairly visual person when it comes to my writing and stuff like that, and I love to go sit down and create maps first and kind of create a map and then kind of design the dungeon crawl or the cave crawl or whatever the characters end up doing off of that dungeon for the dungeon itself to give me some ideas. But I don't think we're going to do that for this. We're just going to try to go without just off the top of our heads with a little bit of try to be a little bit more creative in that respect. Portion of the forest through the game and hardy wood used for. I believe we call our town Westfall, correct? Yes, Westfall. So we're going to say that the trappers and scouts from Westfall do not venture more than 4 to 5 miles into the forest's interior, as not to rouse the ire of the Fae that live closer to the old tower. All right, so give us we should probably set the time of the year, like which season it's in. We might want to do that. Here in the adventure overview, we'll say that it is. because we can make it a little, we'll say it's just happening in the early fall, so leaves really haven't started to fall themselves, early autumn, and that all of the leaves are turning colors, like turning from their greens to their browns and oranges and yellow colors, to give it a little bit more of a sinister vibe once the characters get into the forest itself. So come on back down here. Give me 1 second here. Okay. That's not aroused the ire of the Fae that live closer to the old tower. Alright, so the players, of course, must, however, push beyond the self-imposed barrier and continue to the tower. So now what we're going to do is, we basically kind of just described a little bit about the forest. We could probably do some, like do a little bit more. These are fairly lively when the party enters. Do a little bit more explanation of like the sounds and the smells and things like that to help with immersion a little bit. When they first enter the tower or enter the woods, of course, as they get to the part where they'll encounter the Fae, they'll obviously have a chance to notice the changing of the forest around them, getting a little bit more. Not necessarily, we don't necessarily make it more eerie, but definitely more magical that they can get a sense of, because again, good Fae and evil Fae live in those different areas. So what we could do is, I always like to, there's a few sites. Obviously you use your monster manual. If you have your monster manual, I've got my monster manual here. Of course, in Roll20, but you can use other different websites. There's tons of different websites, obviously D&D Beyond, Donjon, things like that, to get a quick, and they also have, I believe, Wizards of the Coast have on their website a fairly quick little single or maybe double page, 2-page PDF that has creatures listed by creature or by challenge rating, and that's helpful to use as well. So what we're wanting to do is go ahead and put in our notes here, like right here. Before, obviously, we'll delete these notes after we get this whole part written out, but to give us an idea of what types of Fae that they might encounter, good or bad. And we're just going to put so we're going to go here on another page here. We're going to look for some Fae. Now, what we're going to keep in mind is that what the CR is, the challenge rating of the creature, is generally 4 characters of that level would find it a medium encounter, generally, is how it's looked at. We do have a few Fae that are like 1/4, 1/8, 1/2. So basically, a CR1 creature would be a medium to tough battle for a party of 4 first level characters. So we do have some chaotic neutral Fae. Obviously, we named the forest the Darkling Forest. We can have some Darklings in there. They're CR1/2. They might encounter, let's say, a Satyr. You don't have to have them in there, but they're CR1/2 as well. We don't really want anything that's too difficult. I mean, if we wanted to, Quicklings are chaotic evil, but obviously, depending on how you want to use them in your adventures or your homebrew game, might be of something else, alignment-wise. Then there's Blink Dogs. Let's not worry. Let's not put blink dogs in there. Let's go sprites. Quarter CR. And then we also have boggles, which are 1/8 CR. So that gives us an idea. They can encounter maybe some sprites might be following them curiously. A satyr might also be nearby that might show some sort of interaction with questions about the tower, what they know about it, or anything of that nature. Then they might come upon some boggles that are planning some sort of trick on them to sabotage them or something like that, or maybe even darklings that are not only curious but angry that they're actually coming into this part of the woods. So we could perhaps maybe even create, depending on what, as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to make sure to give a social, an exploration, and a combat resolution for the encounters. So what we could do is we could create 3 separate encounters that the DM would basically choose to use for the 45-minute part of the Into the Woods. If their players are more interested in combat, we could have them face the Darklings. If they're more interested in social, we'd have them encounter the satyr, or perhaps maybe the sprites along with it, or perhaps maybe just use the boggles. Yeah, let's just go ahead and drop the sprites off there, and we'll just use the boggles for the 3rd encounter. So let's go ahead and check boggles over here. Just get a remind me. Most recent monsters of the multiverse. Yep, they are pests, engage in petty pranks to amuse themselves. So that would be a really good exploration, an investigation type of situation to find out what's going on, how the characters keep getting stymied along the way through their path. Kind of not really wanting to hurt the PCs, but the boggles are just really kind of more trying to scare them off. So that will be a kind of our exploration. Then the satyr would be our social. And then the darklings would be our combat. So just for notes there, we should be okay on that. All right. So that gives us an idea to set up for once we get to the further parts of this adventure as we're going through. So the woods are fairly alive when the party enters. We could, if we wanted to, put a spring perhaps in part of the forest. If we wanted to as well, would be a great place to encounter all of the creatures that we were talking about for the encounter here. We did put that they can hear the sounds of the forest come alive as the end of the forest. Of course, it dies down a bit as they pass through, with creatures ceasing their chat at the approach of the party. With, not which. A slight smell of decay hangs in the air due to autumn, because we do want the smells to be there. And the air, of course, is damp. Well, we'll say from recent rains, damp from recent rains. Let's see. They're not really going to have much happen to them until they get to that first part of the forest. So it's going to be more of a narration, a couple of boxes of text, I should say, that will kind of describe some of this information as well. Some of the stuff will just be for the DM also, and then. We'll say the trip to the imaginary border is uneventful. And then what we're going to do, give me 1 second here. I'm going to say at the crossing is the next section of this part of Into the Woods. The characters. We'll use that stream we were talking about earlier. No, we won't use the stream yet. We'll come back to say following. Let's say, following the game trails and the map prior to the constable, the characters will pass into the Fey region of the forest. As they do, the woods will become less noisome, but a slight soft singing can be heard as if the characters listen hard enough. The song has no words, but is they can definitely tell um, the PCs get the eerie feeling of being watched, as if many eyes they cannot see watch their every move. Short bit of travel. Party arrives at a stream. Say a wide stream, so that way it at least maybe have to have them like wade up to the waist if they're small creatures, up to their knees if they're medium creatures. All right, so we'll have them come up, following the game trails they can get through. Obviously, once they pass into the Fey region of the forest, the Fey territory, they start hearing the sounds of the life force starting to die down a bit. And then, of course, if they listen, we'll maybe get some sort of check, something really fun, interactive for the characters to do to be able to hear that song. You want to be careful, however, when we do that, when we actually go to write it in there, that we make sure that the PCs or that the DM running it knows that that's not some sort of red herring. It's not something for them to follow. Find some way to write it into the adventure that they just, they get the sense that it is just part of the forest, to describe that they're in the Fey part of the forest. We don't want to give anything specific information for the players to go off course, because you don't want them to go in a different direction. Also, maybe when you give your, sometimes I'll put DM tips or development things in there, suggestions that will help the dungeon masters that were running the adventure to have an idea of what's good and what's important to what's going on in the story, and not to spend too much time on other sections. And I'm going to take a quick break because I just realized I don't have a full drink here and my throat's getting a little rough, so I'll be right back. Just give me a moment. So, um, so we'll say here the party will encounter one of the following three scenes. First, let's go. We'll have some hostile darklings. Well, let's go ahead and look up some darklings again over here, just to reminder, refamiliarize ourselves with the darklings' abilities. And what Monsters of the Multiverse is the most recent. All right. We don't want to make, when we actually go to write it, we don't want to put too many in there to intentionally. We want it to make it dangerous to make the encounter, if they're using the combat encounter. We definitely don't want to make it deadly. We want to make it medium to hard, and obviously. You don't, as the dungeon master, when you're running an adventure like this, you really don't want to. You need to be mindful of making sure that your characters and your players, experience the story. So, when you're designing the combats, if they're designed for like a higher tier play where the characters have played for a while or are experienced, you really want something to challenge them from a combat perspective. It's okay to maybe go a little bit more towards the deadly side. But the amount of darklings we want to put in here is we're going to put in 3, and then recommend, of course, if the party is smaller, like if it's only like 3 or 4 people, to drop it down. Like if it's only 2 or 3, maybe 4 people, drop it down to just 2 darklings or something like that. As the darklings, well, they only have 13 hit points, which is still significant. An AC of 14. Is not too hard to hit. And that it's only their death flash really doesn't do anything to harm anyone other than blind them until the next turn. So we could probably still go ahead and leave 3 in there. Maybe even put a situation in there that when if 2 of them fall, the third one will flee. Because they do have a +5 to hit, which most characters are going to have. Well, I guess some characters they could, if they start off with a, depending on if you're doing point buy or you're rolling your stats, characters might be able to start off with a plus, maybe a +4, +5 to hit as well. So that's not too bad. So yeah, we'll just leave 3 in there, and we'll have the option of if 2 of their companions fall, the third darkling will flee. Definitely trying to maybe put in some narrative that when the death flash of the second darkling goes off, the other darkling is able to flee or something like that. Just put that in the narrative that way. Of course, if the players are not having a hard time with the darkling, you can always allow them to pursue the darkling. Obviously, we want to put something in the adventure about not wanting to wander off of the trail, something along those lines. So let's see what the Darklings. Oops, let's go back over here and see what their stealth ability is, what their stealth score is. A stealth of 7. So we'll just go ahead and give them a passive stealth of 17. It is possible for first level characters to have some fairly high perception, especially if they have like observant or something like that. When they spot a party, characters with a I want to say the Darklings, no mood for conversation, and do not like non-Fae in their forest. I'm going to say players with perception of spot them immediately. Of course, this is going to be higher. Would be and also for those out that might not be familiar, Surprise in 5th edition. It's technically a condition, even though it's not listed as a condition in the conditions section. Basically, what surprise is, let me see here, surprised. Oops, surprise, there we go. So in combat, basically, if you're surprised, you can't move or take actions on your first turn of the combat. And you can't take reaction until that turn ends. So some people could be surprised even if other members aren't. So basically what happens is if someone's surprised at the beginning of combat, they roll initiative as normal. And then when it comes to their initiative, they cannot move or take an action. And then at the end of their turn, they're no longer surprised. So they can still take reactions after that, like casting a shield spell, something along those lines. But if they're surprised, they can't act on the first round. Now, sometimes it doesn't really mention this here, being surprised, because they're not incapacitated by like a condition or have any other conditions. So some DMs will give players advantage if they surprise the monsters in the first round, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're at the table. Typically, what I'll do is, since you as a DM can give the players advantage or disadvantage whenever you want, typically in Adventurers League games when I run, or even homebrew games, I will give them advantage on their first attack. Even if they have extra attack, multi attack, or extra attack or bonus action attacks, they only get advantage on their first attack. Is what I'll generally do, just to reward them for surprising the monsters. I generally don't do that against the players because they're already going to be losing a turn. So, of course, some players might take alert at first level. I'm not sure how many people, Dungeon Masters out there in Homebrew, do it. I know that for Adventurers League, when Spelljammer came out, the Spelljammer box set came out, they had a couple of new backgrounds that had feats attached to them as their special features. And they also allowed bonus feats in Dragonlance for first level characters, and actually also fourth level characters in Dragonlance, to kind of represent the new way that they're going to try to use feats in 5.5 edition or 1 D&D, whatever it's going to be called when it comes out next year in 2024. But AL does allow the characters to select a bonus feat at first level if their background does not have one. And they allow for the skilled feat, the tough feat, or the magic initiate feat if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms as well. So, of course, if someone's playing a variant human or they're playing a character from the custom lineage from Tasha's, they could have alert at first level, obviously, and not be surprised. So that's not too bad. So what we're going to do is before the attack, allow the characters a wisdom perception check, or be surprised at the beginning of combat. All right. All right, so we'll have characters supposed to stream across the map to cross. 3 Darklings spot them and sneak over to investigate. Characters with passive wisdom will notice them. Darklings are no mood. Why did I put mode? Mood. For conversation. And do not like non-fey in their force, so they attack. Before combat begins, allow all the characters a wisdom perception check, or be surprised at the beginning of combat. The Darklings fight to the death. If the combat is going poorly for the party, the last Darkling will flee once their other 2 companions are down. So that's a basic thing for the first combat encounter. So now we're going to go to let's see, combat. Let's go with exploration next. And we have the boggles. The boggles are CR18. Now, we don't necessarily want this to be a combat situation for the players because we don't want them. I mean, the boggles are just, trying to play tricks on them. We're not really going to do anything malicious from the boggles. Oops, we just need boggles, not boggles. So, if we go back to the boggle entry, it's really irksome pests. They're not really they might want to break some of the stuff that the characters have. Like you maybe have one of them obviously we want some oil around the area for the characters to perhaps slip. We don't want anything to just always could be an accident when they're trying to play tricks on them on the characters. But obviously they can create their little rifts to kind of jump around the area. And of course, reach through and attack through if they were going to attack. But what we could do is we're going to say that there are 6 boggles. Okay, so snap as we mentioned, start tapping the PCs randomly on the shoulder. Boggles maybe snap a bowstring or cut the strings of a coin purse, causing the coins to spill into the ground. Whatever the pranks, the boggles are not malicious. We'll probably do like a little chart or something with if the DM can roll a die, let's say a die 8 or a die 10, and here's the prank that the boggles do. And when we write that section, we'll also make it to where the characters, it's not really a combat encounter. Not that we don't want to, take away player agency, but obviously more in the exploration if your characters are more cautious and more thoughtful about just resorting to combat the whole time. But we can figure something out when it come to that part for making it the non so the players understand it's not a combat situation. And finally, we can actually tie the satyr into the song that they heard. Of course, they don't have to find the source of the song if they don't encounter the satyr, or we might just have the. We'll see what happens when we come to it. Actually, oops. And I believe what we can do is we can also put in here that the satyr does not speak Common or Elvish and only speaks Sylvan. That way, if the characters can't speak with them, if someone doesn't speak Sylvan, you can make it into a fun, social, active thing where the players and the satyr all recognize that that each party wants to communicate, but then you have to have a way of maybe pantomiming it out or having something fun like that. All right, so what we've done here, we can go ahead and erase our notes as we've touched each one of the notes there. So what we've done is we've gone through and we went through and did the first part with going into the woods. We described the woods, some stuff for the author or us ourselves if we're writing it ourselves, some of the information about the wood itself, and then making it to the border. Of course, informing the players that the townsfolk don't really go that far in, and they are, put something in there about being respectful of not to log the area too much, as it is a small village, and then the surrounding community. And then they get to the crossing, and then at the crossing, as we mentioned before, we wanted to have 3 different resolutions. And we'll put something in there also that there we go. If the party finishes one encounter quickly, they can use another. So we've got 3 different ways to encounters: 1 social, 1 combat, 1 exploration for the players to encounter, depending on the players that are playing the game, what they're more into. So that is finishing up part 1. So we've got our call to action finished up, and we do have our part 1 finished up. So next week, as the stream is time to finish up, next week we'll start working on part 2. We'll save the changes for this. Again, thanks if you're watching this on video on demand or YouTube. Thank you so much for the support. Please give us a like and subscribe on there if you can. Head over to twitch.tv/themasterofdungeons and give us a follow there. We are affiliate now as well, so if you want to give us a sub there, that's awesome as well. If you want to join our community Discord, you can join the Master of Dungeons community Discord down below us here on the Twitch channel in the About Us section. You can click on the Discord panel, that will take you right there. Plus, you can find all of our socials if you click on the socials link down below to our link tree with all of our social media platform accounts as well. We are going to have Dungeon Delving tomorrow from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. playing Lord of the Rings online, of course, on the Landerval server, free to play MMO. We play that from 2 to 4. We will not be on Friday, as Friday is virtual D&D weekend. I run some games with Baldwin Games and Wizards of the Coast online for virtual D&D weekends every month. And we'll be running games from 2 to 11 p.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Which does unfortunately mean that we are going to have a small hiatus from our live play game on Sunday evenings. We will be missing this Sunday because of the virtual D&D weekend, and then we'll be missing the following Sunday because of Memorial Day. We won't be playing the game. I might end up having some sort of fun stream anyway that evening. We'll see about what's going on, and we will not be having the Tavern Talks tomorrow evening as well, with it being virtual D&D weekend. I am going to be needing some time to prep a little bit for those games this weekend. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. And we appreciate, again, all the support from our patrons and everyone on our Discord servers and the community server. So thanks for checking us out, and happy adventuring. Take care.